Today's show is brought to you by Fractal Bitcoin, but we'll learn more about them later in the show. For now, let's get right into it.
Hey, welcome back to the Mining Pod. We are live in downtown Toronto, which is kind of fun for Consensus 2025. We got the Digital Shovel team with us. Scott, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
It's super fun
Pleasure to have you, I should say.
I know, like I'm in your territory. Like literally, you guys are based in Toronto, and then you guys booked out this spot downtown, which looks sick, actually bringing Bitcoin mining to people front and center in the cities. So like what started this? What kicked off this idea to bring Bitcoin mining to downtown Toronto?
I mean, we're in our backyard. I mean, we always bring a lot of equipment to shows when we do exhibits. But at Toronto Blockchain Week, there's going to be a lot of events and a lot of people, but trying to filter out the miners and not just have a bunch of traffic was important for us. So doing a side event allowed us to promote that and ensure that the people that were actually coming and attending are actually into Bitcoin mining and want to see that side rather than, hey, this is something cool, but I have absolutely no interest in it.
But this is also like pretty in your face, right? And it's loud. I mean, we turned them off just so we could do the show, but it's pretty loud. So are you trying to get foot traffic for like other stuff?
Yeah, obviously we've got the new, the BluAX, my little guy right here.
For the plebs.
For the plebs. Not just plebs, it can be for a bit of everybody. I mean, lottery mining is fantastic. Shout out to Scott from BluAX. Awesome. Not the Scott, other Scott.
The other Scott.
Based off their open source platform. Just sits on your desk.
Yeah, no, I really want to get into that and why you guys are jumping into the BluAX game. But let's kind of zoom out a little bit, talk about Digital Shovel, and then we have to talk about tariffs, Trump, Canada. Like, it's fun that Toronto is hosting all this right now in the midst of a like de facto trade war. It's been kind of looming in the background for a bit. So that's going to touch on what you guys are doing and how you guys impact your business. I'm really curious about that since you guys do so much business across North America. And then we can probably finish up with some topics on the BluAX you guys are rolling out. So yeah, just throw it to you first. Like, what is Digital Shovel and what do you guys build? What are we doing here in Toronto?
Yeah, so we're a vertically integrated manufacturer of Bitcoin mining equipment. Started hacking apart shipping containers and have migrated to a point where now we've built everything in-house. So full metal shop, all the engineering's done in-house, all the welding. We go from a raw sheet metal product to a complete data center. We build the PDUs, we build the circuit boards, and do the circuit board assembly in-house, which obviously is part of the reason why we got led into doing the BluAX, because we had all the technology to do it already.
Yeah. And then in terms of like the products you guys do, it's mostly been Bitcoin mining, but you guys are moving to the AI infrastructure side more, and then also just like general electrical infrastructure for compute. Yeah,
we are. And in fact, last year, more of our sales were the electrical infrastructure. So switchgear, distribution busway systems made up the majority of our sales last year. We still sold a significant amount of Bitcoin mining data centers, but there's other clients that just like that high power density distribution, which, off the shelf, Schneider, Siemens, stuff like that it works, but it's terribly expensive and not purpose built for that kind of architecture. So that made up a very large segment of our business last year.
Yeah, let's be boring for a second and keep going on that, because I think a lot of people who listen to the show are buying this stuff, and so they're interested in it. Like, when we're talking about manufacturing these huge containers that are sitting in front of us, and we'll throw some shots up on the YouTube video for anyone who's watching on YouTube. I mean, it's quite the product at the end of the day, and it seems like no one else is able to make this as a Bitcoin-specific manufacturing process, but now it's bleeding to the AI side of things. Tell me about like the general manufacturing side for Bitcoin mining. Like, how do you kind of guys see yourselves operating in a sea of competitors out there, and then also a sea of traditional competitors who have been making electrical infrastructure for generations at this point?
Yeah, I mean, and comparing to the electrical infrastructure manufacturers, I mean, they're pretty entrenched. They've got a decent moat around them, and as a result, they can have some pretty high margins, which leaves money on the table for us to come in, create a good value proposition, and instead of trying to have a broad spectrum product that fits every need, and Square D makes, for instance, a great busway system, but it fits for everybody and it has to work for everybody, rather than us where we try to build something that caters to a very specific client, or clientele rather. And we don't do custom. So like we make a modular product that can go from, our 100 kilowatt unit for the pod up to 3 megawatts, but it's actually all the same stuff, just scaled up. We're doing the same thing with our electrical infrastructure for our busway systems. You could have which is the same busway system that's in our pod. And then, in fact, that's how that business came to be. Somebody didn't want to buy the pod, but they say, hey, I like how you're doing your power distribution. We make that for us. I think there's a lot of room for application-specific infrastructure providers to come in, not just us, but the fact that we already had all the infrastructure and we make it here in North America. So we're not shipping it from overseas. We know the discipline and the process that goes along with making new stuff like that.
Okay, and in terms of the infrastructure, what kind of stuff would be used for the AI side of stuff? And if you go to one of these new HPC sites, what kind of stuff are you guys selling to them? Is you said the bus boards and
currently the PDUs, the busway systems, and the switchgear. We are working on building a rack-based system as well that can do direct-to-chip cooling, both in a container solution as well as just a skid-mounted or rack-mounted solution as well.
Okay, cool. Not trying to do too much into the product stuff because I really want to focus on like how this stuff is actually one made and then two businesses done across North America with this, because it's interesting with the midst of the Trump tariff background. I'm sure that's been difficult for guys like yourself and others. But yeah, how are you guys kind of starting on the baseline product? If this is all made in North America, like are you guys taking like raw steel and whatnot from various sources in North America? Do you guys bring anything from outside?
Yeah, most of our steel all does come from North America right now. There is some that ships abroad, so there's a tariff there. I mean, I think the biggest impact of the tariffs actually aren't the tariffs themselves. It's more people taking their foot off the gas and just being like, we're not going to be, they're gun shy right now because it's such an unpredictable market that people would rather have an extra bit of cash on their balance sheet to be able to weather whatever random storm is going to come in terms of tariffs. I mean, 10% is the general tariff going into the U.S. right now, plus there's the aluminum and steel. We eat that for our customers right now. But it's the unpredictability of the market right now and not knowing what's going to happen that's the biggest problem.
Is there like certain products you guys have that are going to have higher tariffs where it's a 10% across the board? I'm just not as familiar with the Canadian tariffs.
It's 10% across the board.
Okay.
So long as you're still USMCA compliant, meaning that it's a made in Canada product, which basically means that 10% of the value of your bill of sale cannot be over cannot be foreign made. So if, for instance, when we bring in fans, which fans are one thing we don't manufacture in house, they're made in China, they're subject to the China tariff, even if they land here first and then ship over. However, if they're part of our pod, but it makes up less than 10% of the overall build, then it can be considered part of our build and would just be the flat 10%.
Do you guys change your products based on that, based on the economics of it, or
not? Really, we don't do that, but not at this point. But what we're doing right now is looking at setting over a cross-border assembly plant. So we'll build everything here, ship, because most of our stuff bolts together. So we'll ship the parts down there. They'll have a lesser value when they go over the border, and then it would be a made in USA product at that point.
Okay, so
we would be paying the tariff of going to our own plant, and then it'd be tariff free in the US. Okay, which I guess is the that's the incentive around the tariffs.
Yeah. I mean, it's Bitcoiners. There's always some way around something, especially when it comes to government and a tax cheat. Like, there's a way to get around it. So I'm supportive of it,
efficient.
For one. Yeah. Tax cheat's the wrong word. I mean, I think maybe a status would use that terminology. But
a tax optimization.
I think a business efficiency gain. Okay, so we have these huge containers and you're building them here and then ship them down. A new focus for a lot of people has been building out like the whole HPC sites together. How do you guys as a container manufacturer change to that side of the market changing as well? Like a lot of people are, building out warehouses now. I'm thinking of like the Denton sites for Core Scientific or the Helios sites for Galaxy Digital. They're not using containers as much, though the Galaxy site does have a decent amount of containers. How do you guys kind of change with that side of the market also evolving?
I think there's big efficiencies in doing a building. There's also more costs associated with it. I think we're going to, pander to both sides of that. There's going to be people that want a quick, rapid, modular deployment. Then there's others that are going to want to do the building, and they can kind of pick and choose which components of our offering work best for them, rather than saying, okay, I don't think we're going to marry to containers for the AI HPC side of things. I think the majority of the big players are going to stick with doing their own buildings, but it's the individual components that go into that that I think we're going to be very competitive with.
And how do you? I'm just curious from like a build perspective. So when you guys get a quote from somebody, say Acme miner, whatever, and they're doing AI HPC. They're also doing some Bitcoin mining. They come to you guys and are like, we want some sort of build to be able to enable like both sides of the applications. How do you tailor a build for them? Like what sort of things are you thinking about and bringing to the table? And I'll let you take that where you can with it, because I'm assuming that there's a ton of work to be able to like build out a quote for that and then implement it. Maybe not because you're just so modular and you offer just a standard product, or
and I think that's like kind of our main ethos is to make sure that we keep standard products and it's not custom builds, because like that's if the project is big enough, we do custom stuff. But for the most part, our value proposition is created because we create the economies of scale across all of our customers that are able to pass it on, whether it's somebody that's small or large. The whole misnomer that AI and Bitcoin mining are very similar, it couldn't be anything further from the truth. Like the amount of money and infrastructure you're going to go spend on a Bitcoin mine compared to an HPC are just completely different. I mean, some of the direct-to-chip cooling methods and those racks, there are some crossover there, but if you're doing an air-cooled data center for Bitcoin mining versus what you do with HPC, they're completely different animals.
Have you had to go back to school to learn all this stuff recently, or anything from the history books you've been able to?
Yeah, I mean, the liquid side of things is very new for us. Not for some of the engineers on the team, but I mean, our bread and butter has been air-cooled infrastructure.
Which we're looking at here. You get the double-stacked air-cooled containers.
Yeah, the new Gen 3, blow don't suck.
Yeah.
We're pressurizing the cold side. It has 2 stacks of intakes going through 1 rack of miners. It serves double purpose. One, you've got more intakes, so less air restriction from your filters, but also it stops with the blowback, because a lot of times if you've got a prevailing wind that's blowing against your hot side, it'll blow that hot air back over and then it gets sucked in through the intake. Having it go up 2 stories makes it a lot more difficult to do that. It also helps to contain the sound, because you'll put 2 hot zones back to back and then the sound goes up rather than shooting out towards your adjacent neighbors.
Miners, are you ready to earn more with what you already have? That's what Fractal Bitcoin is for, scaling Bitcoin with Bitcoin using a fully compatible recursive design. In just 7 months, Fractal's hit 18 million users and nearly 2 billion transactions. Fractal's cadence mining reduces up to 50% of your pool fee. No new hardware, no extra energy, and it's easy. FB rewards go straight to your existing Bitcoin wallet address. Over 90% of Bitcoin's hash power is already merge mining Fractal. Get more from the same resources. Start on Fractal today.
Okay, so you guys are shipping all across North America, but where are some hotspots? Like, where are you guys seeing?
Texas.
Texas is always still Texas.
Texas is. I mean, it goes all over. I mean, we ship. They actually fit into a shipping container. So I mean, we've shipped to Australia, Finland, Korea. Throughout Africa as well. But the U.S., Texas in particular, are the main market that made up the majority of our business last year.
Is there like a spot globally that's the easiest to do business with? I'm assuming the U.S. is just pretty simple at this point, minus the tariff stuff. But
I mean, I wouldn't say one's different than the other. I mean, some electrical regulation wise, I mean, we're compliant with Canadian and U.S. electrical regulations.
That should get you most places, right?
And most other markets are fine with that. The EU is a little different, but going to Africa or South America, they don't. If you're compliant with Canada and the U.S., you're compliant there.
You're probably not checking over there, because I mean, we've been tracking on the show a lot of the growth of the Ethiopian market for Bitcoin mining, but it does seem to be that it's just like a lot of Bitmain affiliated companies shipping directly from China. So from like the international standpoint, are you guys interested in competing, or is there just like such a large demand here in North America with the Texas market? International, it's like you pick it up as it comes.
I mean, I don't know that we need to try to undercut to go to those levels. There's different quality levels that come out of some of those products into those markets.
Make it stronger. Yeah, it seems to be like chicken coops.
There's a higher level of acceptance when you've got that, those lower price miners, lower price power. You're comfortable with the geopolitical risk, and you're not going to go and spend $85,000, $90,000, $100,000 per megawatt for containers when you can buy them for $30,000 or $20,000 per megawatt. Like, that's not a market we're interested in competing in.
Yeah, that makes sense. For Texas itself, is it slowed down at all? Like, how do you have? Because I think the gauge for this on a market standpoint is just like the public reports of hash rate in different jurisdictions, and then we get the Cambridge report every once in a while. It just kind of checks out like the IP addresses for Bitcoin miners in a certain area. But you guys, as building and bringing fleets to the forefront of different spots, are another data point that's pretty interesting. Is it slowing down in Texas at all, or is it growing?
It slowed down across the board when the tariffs first came out. Like it was
okay. So tariff related,
completely died off. Everybody freaked out, and now it's just picking back up. And I'd say that the distribution is the same that it was previously. Like we'll get pockets that'll go and skew those numbers. So we've got a big project going on in Iowa right now, which Iowa's been pretty consistent. Like there's always been business coming out of Iowa, but then we'll have a big site that'll come on that'll skew our numbers for a month or two. But there's still lots of demand in Texas, lots of demand across the U.S.
Okay,
now.
it's not slowing down. The tariff stuff is just so interesting. Like I don't want to get you to spill everything on the show, but how did you guys handle it when it first came out and you heard the blustering about this? Like you guys kind of shut down some...
I was of the mindset that it was posturing.
Okay.
And then it was going to come on and go off, which it did. I wasn't expecting the 10% across the board to stay on. Okay.
Well, walk me through what happened originally with the Canada stuff, because I saw you guys have a new Prime Minister, Mark
Carney.
Mark Carney.
Yeah.
How do you feel about him?
Wiping a tear. we all had our hearts set on Pierre.
Yeah. I knew Pierre.
If this is going to be on the internet, if I had to pick a liberal leader to be in power, if I had to choose liberal, Mark Carney probably would have been the one that I would have wanted. I wouldn't have voted liberal, but if I didn't have a choice and I had to pick a leader, I would say he's the most right-leaning leader that we can have, and that's definitely more pro-business.
Okay.
We'll see how much that comes out, but hopefully he's doing a little bit better to negotiate some of these tariffs off. The steel and aluminum was a bit of a pain in the ass, but most of our aluminum was already coming from the U.S., and then we just shifted to buy it from the U.S. So if we bring it here, process it, send it back, there's no tariff on that.
Oh, nice.
It still has a general 10% product tariff, but there was an additional tariff on the steel and aluminum.
Oh, damn, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which is still in place.
Okay.
And then there's the 10% on top of that.
Okay.
But that's on my cost of that aluminum, not my finished product cost.
Okay. And so I'm trying to remember from the CNN headlines I was loosely following at the time. For Canada, there was the blustering back and forth. There's the 51st state comments, all that sort of stuff for a little bit. It seems to have calmed down the last 4 weeks. A lot of the trade agreements are going through now. Trump's in Saudi Arabia right now as of recording and figuring out some trade deals with a few countries over there. He's talked even with Syria, which is amazing that they have a government to negotiate with. Is news to me.
I don't know how much was coming out of there, but
I didn't know either. But okay, so it's just a 10%, nothing super interesting past that, but now it's just a new thing you guys have to deal with and to make some changes post.
Yeah, we basically, just to remain competitive, said that we're going to eat the tariff on new products that we sell.
Yeah. How do you feel about that compared to some of the U.S. container manufacturers you guys have to compete with? Is that something that just kind of sucks? You have to eat it for now. You said you're going to open the fab shop in the U.S.
It gives us more. It'll be an assembly shop for now. It gives us more incentive to do that. We were already planning. That was on our roadmap, anyways, because our product we can ship it flat to the U.S. and especially if we're shipping to Texas, you're $7,000-$8,000 per truck. I can fit 4 pods on a truck, whereas if I send it in parts, I can fit 20 pods on a truck. So that we were already incentivized to do that anyhow. This just accelerated that roadmap.
Okay. Interesting. It's crazy because it's just right across the lake, and you don't have to pay that 10%.
Well, we still will on the parts, but at that point, it's just processed metal that's painted.
Yeah.
It's not and our value is not in the process or powder coated. I should add no more paint, but
story there.
We have a giant. We made our own oven.
Okay.
And it's it's a giant oven you can fit a whole pot in, and I made the guys emboss hot box on the side of it.
I love that.
It's great. You got to come to the plant and check it out. But processed metal is, that's not where our value is. So the value will be created in the U.S. So there still will be a tariff that we'll be eating, but it'll be, 10 or 20% of what it was previously.
What are you seeing change with containers lately from 21 to 22, that cycle to now? Has the basic makeup of these things changed at all?
I mean,
To the layman, it's like it's a container, but I know there's like much more in there. Like there's UL certification, there's different parts you have to purchase, you have to keep up with certifications.
I mean, I think one of the biggest changes over the last little bit was that pivot to the potential of three-phase power supplies. So the T21s that Bitmain and Bitmain true fashion just brought out without telling anybody. And then also changing the form factor. So you got to deal with that, which of course that's never told in advance. You know, the S21 Pros didn't fit on anybody's shelves, so you had to go change your racks for that. That would be, and I guess the heat density. I mean, the new S21s and S21 Pros run extremely hot, which is the reason why we had to introduce a new ventilation system. We could only do so much with the existing fans on the other side. Plus, moving the fans to the intake side, the fans are now in the cold area, which means the motor is not sitting in 50, 60 degree hot aisle, it's sitting in the cold side. And it also helps to deal with any water penetration because now air is coming out rather than getting sucked in like it was before. That was some of the bigger changes for us. In terms of other container manufacturers, I mean, there's definitely a big movement to hydro. Mind you, some people are feeling the pains of some of the early adoption of hydro and not some of the best experiences there. So
a few wipeouts, as always.
A couple. So those are kind of the directions that we're seeing things move right now.
And for you guys, still just focusing on the cold or the air containers rather, but
so the goal is with the AI rack, the HPC rack, is to make it cross compatible with a rack mounted. And when we do that, we want to keep with a standard 2 or 4U setup or 6U setup. So it's a conventional rack, which would also work for HPC.
Okay. So for the cooling side of that, that's what always been interesting to me. And Hut 8 has been working on a new design with Bitmain. You've probably been familiar with it, assuming as their potential customer. And that one's direct cooling to chip. They've said in most of their public information that this is going to be compatible across both. But then the skeptics out there are wondering about like the power density of these things is very different. From a manufacturer side, how do you kind of look at these things? Like what looks like truth to you and what looks like kind of press release bullshit that public companies like to put out there?
I mean, I hope in the deepest of my heart that they stick with the standard form factor. I mean, I think the one that they released with Hut 8 was just a couple of their hydro units put into a box that looked like it was rack mounted, but inside it was the other. I don't know. I haven't taken one apart. I really hope we see some standardization in terms of form factor, which will make it a lot easier for everybody, just on economies of scale, having what like the rest of the data center world does is like, why can't we get our shit together and do that? I mean, I trust.
Is it because of Bitmain? Really, just that? It's just Bitmain.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the other ones are kind of leaning that way, though. Like the seal miner units are still this form factor, right? Like,
but I think
they had an opportunity to do something else.
In air cooled, because you don't want, especially if you're a smaller miner, you don't want to come out with this new design that doesn't fit in anybody else's data centers. But I think with the pivot to liquid cooled or direct to chip, okay, we're changing everything already. So it's not like you're trying to make a unit that has to go into somebody else's data center. You're not going to go and try to make it to go fit in one of their what's Bitmain's, what it's the HK3 or I can't remember what their hydro unit is. Try to make it compliant with regular data center infrastructure and regular racking, since we're already changing everything else. Where you're not using fans, you're using chillers and everything else. Make everything standard like the rest of the world does.
Okay, BluAX. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
So it's popped up on screen again. So if anyone's watching on YouTube, and then I guess for podcast listeners, you can describe it if you want to.
Yeah, I mean it is a digital shovel-shaped PCB. Instead of having a rack, it actually just sits
like a little shield
using on the heatsink and the fan on the back. So it's a 1.2 terahash unit. We are going to be coming out with a 7.2 terahash unit as well. Built off the BitAX framework. Still open source. And it's going to be extremely competitively priced. So they're going to be $99 a piece.
Oh, wow. That's super cheap compared to some of the options out there.
Which is like, it's an amount that, and the way we're kind of going about marketing it is, I don't explain anything to do with block formation or any of that other block templates or anything. Like it is a lottery every 10 minutes, and in Canadian you can win 400 or 3.125 Bitcoin. That's all, and that's how we explain it. And like plebs or people that were not even interested in Bitcoin, or they were, but they don't know anything about Bitcoin mining, and they're like, oh, this is on the 7.2 terahash unit, it's better odds than the Powerball.
It was sick. I think I like their marketing lingo for it because we did some stuff with it on the mining pod, as you know about, and like I just kind of marketed it as like a little miner, like as a desk toy. I don't think there was a lot of interest, but bringing it into layman's terms with the Powerball or lottery makes a lot of sense. In terms of just like working with that open source community for BitX, tell me a little bit about that. You mentioned Scott, who's been on the podcast a few times to talk about making the BitX. How was it like performing this? I asked that with knowing a few listeners who are interested in making these sort of things just for themselves, for fun, for tinkering with it. And I love how like that open source ethos is coming back to Bitcoin mining, which for the last 10 years has been dominated by groups like Bitmain, which is all like closed source, kind of doing their own thing.
Yep. So I met Scott at Mining Disrupt.
Yeah.
He came back to the villa that we were hosting a party at, and I just said, look, I don't want to come across as the corporation that's coming in to profiteer off of this. And we had a discussion, want to make sure we had his blessing.
Yeah.
It's like just any improvements or whatever you do, keep them open source, which we are. I mean, we're pivoting to make it directly powered off USB-C, hopefully for our next version, rather with the barrel connector.
Yeah.
Which we plan to keep everything open source and improvements, and seem to be pretty on board with us.
I like the
embracing
USB-C
the
thing. That's smart.
Yeah. There was some issues with power negotiation we were running into out the gate.
Yeah.
This one still has the barrel connector and the USB-C on it.
Yeah.
But our plan is on the next version just to have it fully USB-C if all goes well.
Okay. When did you first get interested in BitX? Was that just this last calendar year?
Yeah.
Because at first I think it was... BitX has kind of been out a little bit at this point. Like it's been 18 months plus. Like Scott first kind of iterated on it.
Yeah, it was probably just this calendar year. And then I kind of got on board with it.
And then it popped.
And then somebody brought up and like, oh, you got to make a BluAX. I'm like, make a what? And then we do all of our own circuit boards in house. We don't make the PCB, but we have pick and place lines, and like I can bang these out super cheap. We're not trying to make a pile of money on it. We do want to promote actual decentralization, moving away from the mining pools.
Yeah.
If you are going to be on a pool, big fan of Ocean and the crew. But yeah, the more we can do to decentralize stuff and if you want to control your block template and do those other elements, the better.
When does this launch?
Well, today's the launch for it at the show, and then we're going to start shipping them June 1st.
Cool. Okay.
And then the Pro, which will be the 6-chip version, 7.2 terahash, will be July 1st.
Okay. Hell's yeah. We'll have to get one for the show.
100%.
Okay, let's finish out with some Canadian facts. I need to hear something about the Bitcoin community here in Canada that people are not aware of, or something that gets you hyped about being in Toronto. Like what territory, or not territory, what province of Canada are you most impressed with from a Bitcoin mining standpoint? Like consistently puts out the most hash rate?
I'm not going to say most hash rate because they don't, they're shit with building up their transmission and delivery. Newfoundland, Labrador, super cheap power. It's like, I think it's 1.9 cents a kilowatt hour. Canadian. There's a company over there, client of ours, Block Lab, and their sister company Hesia. Because it's so cheap, they make heaters, industrial heaters, and they say, okay, look, we'll give you free heat to your plants, and they go heat all these plants with Bitcoin miners, but they make Bitcoin out of it. They're like, I'll heat your plant for free and pay for your power bill. Really cool project over there.
What is the power source up there?
Hydroelectric.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. They have a shit ton of hydroelectric, and they have a new dam that's coming online, I think, shortly. But the problem is they had this really weird deal with the Quebec government, where the Quebec government lended the money to help fund the dam, but they had to sell all the excess power to them if it wasn't being consumed at site at like some stupidly low rate. So they're working slowly to increase transmission delivery. I know they had a moratorium on Bitcoin mining for a little, or at least new ones. I don't know where they're at now, though.
Okay. That counts. Anything you're looking forward to this week during Consensus or Toronto Blockchain Week writ large?
I mean, I think, and we're already seeing it, is just seeing people that aren't aware of Bitcoin mining, or just think it's something that is purely on an industrial scale, and the level of interest from people that I never would have thought were as interested in this. I mean, my dad was here yesterday, and he's like, I'm going to get one of those for my desk. And like, it was just, he had never thought about Bitcoin mining before. So bringing that to the masses is exciting, and looking forward to doing it more throughout the show.
Awesome. Scott, thanks so much for joining.